Please, stay away from me. Or better yet, just leave. My mother was wheezing, trying to get her breath back to normal. Mom, I just wanted to tell you that I love you, I answered in a sad and hurt tone. But those words couldn't change anything. Go away! Get out of here! My mother shouted, using the last bit of her strength, as if the person in front of her was not her own daughter, but the worst enemy she hated. So I had to leave. I was absolutely crushed. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. What could be worse than hearing that from your own mother? From this dialogue, you can probably conclude that my mother is some kind of immoral member of society, unworthy of having children. But in fact, it's not what you think at all. My mother is a perfectly normal and adequate person. It's just that we are totally not compatible. And it's not about horoscopes or any psychological issues. My name is Isabel, and I want to tell you my story about how I almost took my mother's life. And that's because my mom just can't stand me. But luckily, she doesn't literally hate me. In fact, my mom loves me as much as I love her. But something else interfered with our relationship. Something stronger than love between the two people closest to each other. Doctor, what's wrong with me? My whole body is itchy and covered with some kind of blisters. My then young mother said frantically to the doctor in charge of her pregnancy. Unfortunately, it happens. You have a fetal intolerance. Simply put, you're allergic to the baby you're carrying. The doctor explained in a calm tone, trying not to make my mother hysterical. But how? How was that possible? She almost screamed in despair. But if medicine had the answer to that question, Mom probably wouldn't have had to fight for our lives for the 9 months I was inside her. Besides, Mom was left alone with her problem because Dad died of some kind of poisoning as soon as she got pregnant with me. But against all odds, Mom won. Or rather, she and I won. And I was destined to come into this world. I was born a perfectly healthy baby. And my mother was sure that once I was born, her problems would vanish too, and she would finally be able to experience all the joys of motherhood, especially since her weakened body needed to recover. No way. All her hopes for peace and health were never going to come true, because when I came along, my mother didn't get any better. She was still suffering from skin rashes, constantly panting, coughing, and sneezing. I want to be a good mother. I want to happily watch my baby grow, and I want to enjoy life. Why doesn't this nightmare ever end? She told the doctors through her tears. But they had nothing to say, because medicine was once again powerless. After a while, however, the reason was discovered, and it was me again. When I was 5, the doctors stated in horror, "You have a very rare form of allergy. You are literally allergic to your daughter. And you are totally incompatible with her," they said. But how? How is it possible? After all, my daughter is supposed to be the closest thing I have, my mother exclaimed, as if trying to find an excuse for her diagnosis. But it was pointless to deny the facts. As soon as my mother was separated from me, even for a short period of time, she immediately felt better. After the diagnosis, my mother decided to send me to her cousin for some time. I don't remember exactly how long I stayed there, but when I came back, I saw something that shocked me to the core. I didn't see the same mother, the mother I had known since the day I was born, run down, gloomy, and languishing. This time I saw a beautiful young woman, full of strength and energy, as if she was a decade younger. I mean, she got rid of the allergen and finally began to return to real life for the first time in years, because she had been suffering ever since she became pregnant. But my mother's bliss came to an end because I came home. And the very next morning, she woke up again feeling awful. "Mommy, I'm so glad we're back together," I exclaimed happily as I was waking up. But Mommy's face was so gloomy that I began to feel guilty just for being there. Though in fact, my mother had never said anything negative to me and didn't blame me for everything that was going on. "You're my princess, my yellow daisy," she used to tell me in a gentle voice during moments of long remission, which only happened when massive doses of antihistamines had the desired effect. but they couldn't be taken all the time because they cured one thing but severely damaged the other. Eventually, after a while, my mother made an insane but bold and brave decision. She decided to sell our big apartment and buy 2 small ones instead that were next door to each other. And from then on, Mom lived in one apartment and I lived in the second apartment across the wall. And despite the absurdity of the situation, there was even something funny about this format of life. And already in junior high school, my classmates were jealous of me. "Isabel, you are the luckiest person in the world. Everyone would love to have a mom, or better yet, a dad with the same diagnosis," the kids in my class said while laughing. "Don't be jealous. I wouldn't wish such a life on an enemy," I answered them angrily, as this talk really annoyed me. Yeah, it was really cool to live alone, but not at 7 or 10 or 15. Besides, nothing can replace a normal mother-daughter relationship. I missed my mom's hugs, spending time together, taking walks together, and sometimes I wanted to howl from all the sadness and pain because my mother was so close and yet so far away from me. But even that was only somewhat effective because in some way or another, we were still in contact. "Wow, Mom, are we going on vacation?" I exclaimed happily when I saw a few suitcases on the doorstep of my mom's apartment. "No, I'm going on vacation, and you're staying home with Aunt Gregora," replied my mother and coughed. It was as if she felt no remorse at all. I felt so lonely at that moment. My mother is leaving me and going on a holiday. "You're just a selfish woman who does not care about my existence," I screamed in anger. "You're hiding behind your allergies when really you're just looking for an excuse to enjoy your freedom." And that's when the tears came out of my mother's eyes. "Isabel, all I've been doing all your life is fighting a battle with myself. I'm very tired. Every day I'm balancing somewhere between life and death. Please understand me and give me some time to get better." Then my mother couldn't help herself and hugged me tightly. A few seconds later, she fell on the floor and wasn't showing any sign of life. I was terrified because I thought my mother was dead. I started screaming and trying to wake her up. "Mommy, wake up! Mommy!" That was the day Mommy went into the ICU and she almost died. Once again, I felt very guilty because I was the one who made my mother emotional that day. She hugged me, even though that kind of contact with an allergen is deadly for her. I was just being a defiant girl who behaved very selfishly. After what happened, I swore to myself never to reveal my feelings to my mother again. After being discharged from the hospital, Mom went on vacation after all. For 7 days, she stayed at the seaside. And when she came back, her face was all glowing with happiness. "Isabel, I have a chance. We have a chance. I met someone at the resort," said my mother, waving her hands in excitement. "Well, now it all makes sense. Love affair," I thought to myself. I figured my mother was head over heels in love with some overseas prince. But that was not the case. It turned out that the reason for my mother's joy was not a man, but a woman. While on vacation, my mother met a lady. They formed a friendship, and later it turned out that the woman was Mrs. Maisel, a parasitologist and quite famous in medical circles. And when my mother told her about her problem, Mrs. Maisel offered to help. She said that allergies are often caused by nothing else but parasites that live in the human body. At first, my mother was skeptical, but then decided to try. She said she had nothing to lose anyway. If she failed, the most she would lose was a few $100s and a couple of hours of her time. Now Mom needed to do some tests and wait for a few long weeks for the results. Mom didn't hold out much hope. Sometimes she even laughed at herself. "How wonderful human beings are. They can believe anything, except for reality," she said. But I caught a hint of hope in her eyes and voice, although I myself was sure that this attempt would not succeed. One morning, we were awakened by a phone call. It was Mrs. Maisel. She told my mother to come immediately to her clinic and added that she had some very startling news. A few hours later, we learned what divided our family's life into before and after. They found an incredible number of parasites in my mom's system, unusual and very dangerous. Usually, these parasites are found in water and can do a lot of damage to humans. Mom couldn't believe her ears for some time, and even suspected that Mrs. Maisel was a sham. But then she remembered something. Shortly before Dad died, he had gone fishing. But on his way back, he got lost and was stranded on the riverbank for 3 whole days. All that time, all he had to eat was the fish he caught and drink water from the river. And when he ran out of matches, he ate the fish raw. This went on until a search and rescue team found him. After he returned home, my dad felt very sick, and his condition worsened daily, but he refused to get medical help. 3 months later, he died, and soon my mother found out she was pregnant. I myself knew nothing about this story. It took me a while to digest the information. After all, Mom was sure that Dad had died because of a heart problem, but now she was starting to have doubts. We decided not to delay the treatment, and Mom started the anti-parasitic program. Within a month, her condition was changing at the speed of light. At first, she felt sicker than ever, and I was seriously worried about her health. And then Mom began to blossom and shine. "I think it's only now that I'm starting to come back to life," she said as she hugged me. Now she could hug and cuddle me much more often than before because the disease was starting to subside. A month later, the allergies were gone. That's when everything finally became clear. After a bad fishing trip, Dad came home infected with parasites, and then he infected my mother with them. Then Dad died, and Mom was left with this nasty thing in her system. Strangely enough, I was not affected by it. I was very lucky. After recovery, my mother and I started living together again, and only the habit of walking far from each other reminds us of the years of horror we endured. Just imagine how invisible to the eye creatures can ruin people's lives. I guess now the parasite phobia will stay with me forever. Tell me in the comments, have you ever encountered something like this? And share this story with your friends. More people need to learn about the dangers associated with parasites.